Council meeting, Monday, November 25th, 2019 at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Can I have disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof from Council? Seeing none. I'd like to begin by acknowledging gather today is the land tradition of the Haudenosaunee whom we share. And as we know, they're excellent and water, and today we're going to be dealing with a lot of water. To think about the needs of our community in all is approval minutes. We have a pair of minutes listed in the council package. Moved by Councillor Vasic, seconded by Councillor Hanmer. All those in favor? Thank you. Next up, we have reports of committees. Two committee reports. One of the last times we'll be doing this. Two reports of committees to move. Moved by Councillor Bodley, seconded by Councillor Bonagar. Have to share things around nowadays. Yeah. All those in favor? Good. That's all of us. And I guess I missed your time, Councillor Hanmer, but you want to go now? Sure.
Thank you, Mayor. I thought you might be doing it through the moment of reflection, because what I'd like us to reflect on are partnerships. I am recognizing two great institutions that we have in our fair city, the University of Waterloo and the Waterloo Girls Minor Hockey Association, or the Ravens. I had the privilege on Friday of being at the President's dinner, or breakfast actually, breakfast, and the University of Waterloo partnership with the Ravens was recognized for a President's Community Impact Award. This particular partnership sees girls go through training with the University of Waterloo Warriors men and women's programs on an annual basis, learning hockey skills as well as leadership skills, and most importantly and near and dear to my heart is how to volunteer and how to be a good corporate community citizen. So I'm very proudly wearing my Ravens jersey and my Warriors pin. So congratulations to the city, as the Ravens are also an affiliate group with the city, and we would not be able to do as much as we do without the support of the city. So thank you.
And thank you, Councillor Hanmer, for your efforts, and to the first, since she was wearing a jersey on already. So that's why sort of in this order, out of that order. We go with delegations. We have three sets of delegations here today. First up is the enforcement of parking and snow removal bylaws with Mr. Ron Ross, resident of Waterloo. Welcome, Mr. Ross. I know this is something that you're passionate about, and hopefully we can all stick to the facts and make sure we have a nice, safe, respectful workplace here today. Comments on our staff.
Council, here January 70. I've lived through several different mayors, from the late Don Meston up to the late Herb Epp. And the one thing that they had in common was they always responded to the needs of the citizens, and the phone calls and the early days of emails. They never hid behind the wall of secretaries or voicemails. For the last 13 years, phone calls that don't of 50 years in this community, is that when you send two emails to a member of this council back on May 8th, 2019, and the response was that both emails were deleted because they were not read. That is impressive as a citizen. On my, and especially on my, because the attempt they move, bylaw doesn't go and take a look at the adjoining streets. That's too much of an effort. When it comes to the snow removal, the rhetoric or the excuses, the cliches don't change that much. Okay. We'll send out an officer to investigate. Thank you for sending this information along. I have forwarded your inquiry to compliance and standards. I've been told that the courts have give them a second crack at the cat. That's not true, because the person who's presiding at the hearing does not have the authority to change the bylaw. It's a magistrate. Okay. I've even been told by your Shamir Mehta, who stated that due to extreme, we will providing reasonable opportunity to comply. Now, I listened with interest the meeting that you had here on May 13th, in which the first hour and a bit was discussion on the snow. Well, you mentioned some interesting numbers. 3,300 complaints, 401 site where properties were cleared by the city. Well, that's because or did this clean homes? Well, 30 times refused to clear their sidewalks. It's embarrassing when you're walking along the road and a police officer on 2 separate occasions comes up and asks you or suggests to you that you walk on the sidewalk with them. The worse than the sidewalk. Their response: stay safe, and I understand and appreciate your concern. This is from our police. At least they're showing a concern. It has been suggested, what was I sent to Kevin Gerlach this morning, proposals for the snow and ice removal. Albeit that we asked several times as to why the word will is in that bylaw, we have yet to receive an answer from our ward clerk. Caused to be removed along the entire length of accumulations of snow and ice for the sidewalks. Not a path, not something that is a kid's shovel wide and I can't walk down the sidewalk with my cane or my walking sticks. The enforcement, you have to get rid of the word may. That is one of the most wussy words I've ever seen. If you watch Amazing Race Canada, at the start they say the last one to arrive at the finish line. Use the word will, they are eliminated. You have to get rid of that word may. You also have to get rid of the police officers. The chief has enough problems and the lack of staff to have our police officers go out and check the sidewalks. If you want to hire paid duty officers, fine. Be prepared to pay probably $75 to $80 per hour per officer. Okay? What I suggested 13 years ago was that you retain the services of local residents on a part-time basis to go out 24 hours after a snowfall with somebody with a sidewalk sweeper or plow or whatever. And if the sidewalk isn't cleared, you do it and you build a city or build a ratepayer. That went in one ear and out the other for the last 13 years. The thing is, you have to do something. I have read that court case where I forget what they call it now, the Superior Courts of Ontario have ruled that the municipalities are responsible for clearing the sidewalks and not the homeowner. I've already fallen twice this year. The first day, fortunately, was on the first snowfall, and it was black ice at the corner of Albert and Columbia, where those border out houses are. That was the first day of the snowfall, so I couldn't do anything. I've also fallen on the sidewalk where the city hasn't didn't clean up the sidewalk, or the road yet. Okay. Yeah, it's about time that the city started moving. Watching the May 13th YouTube presentation, I believe it was you, Councillor, who were asking all of the relevant questions. Okay, what can we do and how do we got to do this, we got to do that, and we got to do it now. Okay, it's past now. It has to be done now. Not tomorrow, not next year, not next winter. Now, because we're getting older, seniors' bones get brittle, and if I go out there and break a hip, okay, that's going to be the worst thing in my life because I don't sit around all day. I'm an active person. And for health reasons, I walk 8 to 10 miles a day. And if you want an idea how far that is, that's roughly from here to the Zare store at Lincoln and University Ave, return twice. That's about 8 miles. That's how far I walk. I'm not going to be locked up inside. And if I fall, I fall. Thank you.
Well, thank you much. Thank you very much, Mr. Ross, for your detailed presentation. I know you're always, very detailed in the notes that you send, and I don't see any questions from council. So thank you very much for your delegation today. Next up is the. Do you have question of staff, Councillor Bonnevar?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Jaworski. Just to pick up on a note that was raised by Mr. Ross. Residents are aware of the fact they need to clear their sidewalks. How clear are we in the requirement to clear the width and the length? Because the very narrow tunnels of clearance are an issue in a number of parts of my ward and probably in similar places across the city. So can you just explain to us how that's communicated and how that can be improved?
Through you, Mayor Jaworski, the requirements of the bylaw are communicated as they are, which is the entire sidewalk down to bare concrete. What the officers will do when they're inspecting or re-inspecting after it's being cleared, they'll make a judgment call determining whether or not it is wide enough to be passable. But the standard that we use and the standard that it's communicated is the entire sidewalk, not 1 inch, or sorry, not 2 feet or whatever it is. So we are, we're in the process now of developing or rolling out the communications plan. So we'll check that, but I'll make sure that that's overemphasized. But our communications plan that's been in place for years is derived from the bylaw, and the bylaw is very clear. These sidewalks shall be cleared.
And just to follow up, and the capacity for your team to follow up on complaints, can you give us a little bit of an idea of I know that we're looking at an update soon. Is that something that you've been looking at? It's just on snow and sidewalk. Is that something you've been looking at in terms of your capacity to respond or how to prioritize calls?
Through you, Mayor Jaworski, when we did the presentation in May, we had indicated that there are some improvements needed, and quite frankly, I think my words at the time were, we need to be better, and we're going to commit to being better. We had some challenges with, with the software package that was tracking our complaints. As you may know, sometimes what will happen is when the snow falls, we get a bunch of complaints. Not all of them are acted upon before we get another snowfall. And that's the change of priority. So there were quite frankly, there were some locations that we missed last year. We've improved the software package, and I believe there was information circulated last week to council to say, here's the results of our review. In terms of additional resources, we have 2 officers throughout the winter, and the piece from a resource standpoint that we're looking at is not being able, it's not about bringing on more officers, it's about reallocating during those peak times. So it's really the peak times that create the issues. We've also included in the update that I provided, there were some technology improvements that allow the officers to do a lot of what they were doing before in terms of tracking and mid-work on laptops in the field, as opposed to having to, so it's less time in the office. So we're going to evaluate that as we roll them out. It's not perfect. There's a lot of kilometers of sidewalk in the city. And so the piece that I think is really important is giving every complaint the same priority and making sure that some of them don't get lost. And so, quite frankly, the delegate has communicated to me in the past that some addresses were missed, and I'm not disputing that fact. As I indicated before, and I'll indicate again today, we need to do better, and that's what we're committing to.
And last question, Councillor Vassic, please.
Thanks through you, Mayor Jaworski. Just curious if you can speak to the wording, the may to will, if that bylaw should be changed, why not, and some rationale for that.
Through you, Mayor Jaworski, the word may be enforced is a common phrase in virtually all of our bylaws, because typically there's more than one officer or type of officer that can enforce. Police officers, although they, there's only a handful of bylaws that the police service helps us out with. They're named in each bylaw, just like city officials. So the word may is often used just to indicate that it may be these people or maybe that people. If council chooses to have us look at rewording the bylaw, that's certainly something we can do. I'll be quite frank in saying that the wording, that particular phrase, is not the important part to me. The important part to me is how we operate. And the delegate has suggested, if I may be frank, that that phrase in the bylaw suggests that we just pick and choose based on whether we're in the mood to enforce, and I can assure this council that's not the case. Our operations piece is going to remain in place that way.
Excellent. Thank you, Shane. Next delegation up is the Uptown Waterloo Vitality Report. And it's, I see Tracy Van Kelsbeek and Jamie Tate.
Good afternoon. I'm Tracy Van Kelsbeek. I'm the Executive Director of the Uptown Waterloo BA, for those of you that don't know me. A few words of welcome I think that I'd want to share on here about our Uptown Vitality Report. This is a project that really evolved and grew over the last year in partnership with Ryan Mounsey, who used to be here at the City of Waterloo, and the BIA. And hopefully you had a chance to look at it through your package over the last week. There's a lot of really great information in here. I do want to start by saying, though, that it's a start. We've never done this before, so I'm sure that people have lots of great ideas and we want to hear them, and we can grow and evolve this report as time goes on. So cities are defined by their uptowns and downtowns. These destinations support hotels, shops, entertainment, restaurants, offices, housing, and have the greatest diversity of parks, architecture, amenity spaces, and the best transit options. Uptown and downtowns experience dramatic peaks and valleys with an ebb and flow of jobs, retail, and housing, reflecting community prosperity, resiliency, and vibrancy. Cities, businesses, business improvement associations, government, and investor decisions all have a role in positioning uptowns and downtowns for success. Many city cores introduce incentives, growth management tools, and public realm investment to encourage business growth, intensification, and vibrancy. Earlier this year, as I mentioned, the BIA and the City of Waterloo Economic Development Staffing Team discussed the importance of better understanding how Uptown is growing and evolving, especially when it came to economic impact, retail trends, office trends, consumer spending, and business attraction opportunities, and hence the Uptown Vitality Report was born. So the purpose of the report is to provide that high-level overview of activity and economic growth in the heart of Waterloo. It includes information about amenities, leasing activity, and growth trends with a consumer spending potential analysis. It's based on available public data like permit and planning applications and other sources including information from the BIA, City of Waterloo Economic Development Division, and local real estate and marketing professionals. To begin the review, which noted that Uptown was the commercial, cultural, and tourism hub of Waterloo, which is part of the second fastest growing Canadian census metropolitan area. Uptown is a major transit hub due to our several bus stops and 3 ion stations, and we form part of the larger Toronto-Waterloo Innovation Corridor intensification strategy that helps attract jobs and talent to Waterloo region. Geographically, the Uptown Vitality Report relates to the Urban Growth Centre, a primary intensification node in the city of 219 acres of land, and the Uptown BIA district. So we feel that Uptown is a very thriving urban centre, and it continues to grow by many things. They are progressive development, so Uptown continues to experience high-quality urban intensification projects like the circa 1877 at 181 King Street South, 14 Princess Street, and 155 Caroline that are all adding new residents, workers, and vitality to the area. These projects are a source of new housing, talent, office space, retail space, amenities, and transit ridership. We also feel that we're thriving because of our active transportation. Human-powered modes of transportation such as biking and walking are increasing in Uptown, are enhanced by major trail upgrades such as the Waterloo Spur Line and the Iron Horse Trail. Our dedicated separated bike lanes along King Street, 3 ion stations, and many bus stations, as well as the new transit-oriented developments like Circuit in 1877 and 19 Regina, which both have modest supplies of parking spaces. We also have a great startup ecosystem. We form part of Waterloo Region's startup network. The system is supported by the Communitech Data Hub, which opened in 2017 with over 50 startups and a growing number of new technology and digital media businesses. We have strategic investments. The city has made many major investments that add vitality to Uptown, such as long-term leases with Perimeter Institute and CG, which add 360,000 square feet of research institute space. The city also provides significant funding for Communitech's Data Hub. Over the past few years, the city created several strategic initiatives such as the Uptown Community Improvement Plan, the Brownsfield CIP, and Parkland Cash in Lieu caps and incentives. We also do a lot of public realm investment. The city as well as the region have made investments in accessible public spaces in Uptown such as the Waterloo Public Square, Waterloo Park, and King Street North Streetscape, with dedicated and separate bike lanes, wider sidewalks, and unique thematic lighting. The city is investing in a major expansion for the Waterloo Memorial Complex, also into arts and culture programming such as the Lumen Festival, and has created new sidewalk patio guidelines and works closely with our BIA on events and programming in the core. And we also believe in a diversity of businesses. Many of our Uptown property owners, the BIA and the city, all believe in the importance of having business diversity. And with data from this report, we'll be working on a plan to attract more retailers and offices into Uptown. So a little bit about amenities. Today we have over 500 businesses, which include 89 retail stores, more than 70 medical holistic offices, over 60 tech and digital media companies, more than 45 financial service companies, and the Delta Hotel. Our city center is transformed into a major learning and discovery hub, entrepreneurial hub, and main housing market within the city and the larger region of Waterloo. As mentioned before, Uptown is home to 2 world-class research institutes and the Community Tech Data Hub. Close to 3,700 new residential units have been recently built in Uptown or are proposed soon, which could add up to or close to 6,500 new residents. We have 12 city parks, 4 privately owned public spaces, and 5 major trails. We believe that Uptown is a cultural hub for our city as well. It's home to a vibrant culinary scene with over 80 restaurants and eateries, many major and emerging events and festivals, active programming at Waterloo Public Square, behind City Hall and in the Regina Street lot, and in laneways. We're home to a variety of creative industries such as digital media, photography, nonprofit art organizations, public art featuring local and international artists, as well as key cultural institutions. Our 26 annual festivals and events bring in hundreds of thousands to our core. Events like Waterloo, the KW Comedy Festival, the Comfort Food Crawl, Open Streets, Solstice Sampling. I could name a bunch of them here, but I'm not going to. Plus, we have lots of other programming like the Final Fridays, Thursdays Uptown, and other food festivals and outdoor concerts. When we look at housing, since 2008, Uptown has experienced steady residential intensification, generating 1,412 residential units built, adding about 2,500 new residents. At present, there are 741 units under construction at 128 King North, 155 Caroline, circa 1877 in the Barrel Yards. That could add up to 1,312 new residents over the next 2 years. Combined, recent and active development projects could add up to 2,153 units, which is roughly about 3,800 residents. By the end of March this year, the city had approved 1,282 units in planned development applications, with several projects moving forward through the Brownsfield remediation and site plan processes. These projects could add up to 2,269 residents in Uptown. At present, there are 2 development projects under review that could add an additional 267 new units, which is about 473 residents. So in total, by 2025, and this is huge, Uptown could have 3,702 new residential units, adding 6,554 residents, and that's a total of $771 million in estimated construction value. Uptown has a variety of new development projects that add additional commercial space for retail, service, and restaurants. These projects include the shops at Waterloo Town Square, the former Adult Rec Center at 185 King, the Barrel Yards development, the Strata project, the historic post office site at 35 King North, and the Princess Dorset Towers. With lower vacancy rates in Uptown, these projects will add opportunities over time. A site walk earlier this year showcased that almost half of all Uptown businesses could be found on ground floors. And we continue to experience diversity amongst our businesses with the 89 retail stores, 85 restaurants, and 70 health and wellness offices. Excuse me. Waterloo has the largest office market in Waterloo region, with just over 50% of the office supply in the cities of Kitchener, Cambridge, and Waterloo. Uptown's office market occupies approximately 1.7 million square feet, which is about 23% of the city's overall office supply. The office space is concentrated in 5 large office buildings and an expanding series of smaller buildings and upper story conversions. Uptown is anchored by many financial service organizations, including Sun Life, which is our largest property owner. Following the Community Tech Data Hub and Shopify announcements back in 2015, Uptown has experienced increased demand for urban office space. Since 2008, over 300 square feet of space has been absorbed, including new office construction, restoration, and conversion, and leasing activities. Uptown's office market is nearing a historic low vacancy rate. New office space will be required to accommodate growing companies and to attract new businesses. Between 2020 and 2025, there's the potential to add another 370,000 square feet of office space from new and proposed developments that would generate potentially another 1,850 jobs. I'm going to turn things over to Jamie Tate to talk about some market analysis that his firm did with us around some consumer spending potential.
Thank you, Tracy. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, public. Jamie Tate, president of Tate Economic Research. We're a firm that specializes in retail market analysis. So what we were asked to do here is quantify the forecast changes in the marketplace that will be happening in the Uptown, and based on primarily based on population growth, and we're seeing, as Tracy had mentioned, the increase in office space. What we're going to see is tremendous growth in terms of expenditure potential, and I want to take a moment to explain the first number there. So what we forecast is that by 2025, we'll see an increase of $97 million in annual expenditures. And I wanted to explain that number. What we've got right now is roughly 2,000 residents in the Uptown core. What we're going to see by 2025 is roughly 8,000. So we're seeing an increase of 6,000 residents. And that's a tremendous amount of growth. So we're not even quite a third there in terms of expenditure potential. So the numbers that come out of this analysis are indicative of that type of growth that we're forecasting, and we're seeing as well on its way. We're seeing there's two sides of expenditure potential as it relates to retail. The first side, and usually the most important side, is the residential. The second side is the employment side. So we're also going to see significant growth in expenditures made by employees, and for magnitude, that's roughly the $15 million. So what I wanted to touch on a little bit now was and being conscious of the time too, is seeing the implications of what that's going to mean for the Uptown core. Tremendous growth, tremendous opportunity. We're seeing an increase in forecast supply. Certainly there's some challenges that are in this, and I'll refer to it as a downtown in terms of referring it's similar to other downtowns, in that we're seeing the change and the implications that relate to increases in occupancy rates, increases in costs, the challenges of continuing to operate businesses, and the changes that are happening in the environment. So there's certainly terrific opportunity here in the Uptown core. Tremendous amount of growth, and I did want to make sure that we understood that retail's going through such an evolution. Certainly e-commerce is a major factor that's influencing the way that Uptown core can function in the future. But I did want to make sure we're well aware there's tremendous opportunity, there's a lot of growth. I think it's something we're going to have to look at and monitor in some more detail, but at this stage of the game, really just to comment on the growth and the opportunity that exists. And with that, I'll say I'm happy to answer more questions, but I'll turn it back over to Tracy.
Thanks, Jamie. A couple other things we wanted to touch on, and then we'll open it up to questions. We wanted to talk a little bit about the community improvement plan. So as you know, back in 2015, the city approved an Uptown community improvement plan to introduce a number of incentive initiatives for properties in the core. The CIP project included the Uptown Waterloo Urban Growth Center, as well as the McGregor Albert Heritage Conservation District. At present, there are 4 available granting incentives still available. So there's the facade improvement grants, of which the BIA has provided additional funding to support over the last few years. There are also study grants, fee grants, and minor activity grants. So I have a breakdown by each year, but I kind of totaled it up to say that grants between 2016 and 2018 were almost 1.3 million, and the construction value of that same time frame was almost 2.5 million. So again, like huge investment in our Uptown. So you can see the numbers there from 2018. This for the CIP for 2019, at the time when I talked to Rachel, I think we'd only received 3 applications. I think there might have been another one that's come in, and that were approved. So the numbers have they went here to up here to kind of back down here again. So we'll probably be looking at a revamp on that program, I'm thinking. Oh, and I went too far. Sorry. I'm going to talk about Uptown Present. I don't know how to make it go back. I don't know if Kevin can help me there. The BIA keeps track of businesses moving into, away, or closing. So the past few years have been challenging, as we all know, for Uptown. Businesses due in part to rising property values, increased rents, and LRT and streetscape construction. In 2018, Uptown said goodbye to 15 businesses, with 9 closing and 6 moving away. However, Uptown also saw increased commercial growth by welcoming 27 new businesses from various different industries. Looking at 19, by the end of October, 8 businesses have closed and 6 have moved, with another 31 new businesses moving into Uptown, a mix of retail, restaurant, and service industries. When we look at the future of Uptown, now that our construction is complete and several planning decisions underway to facilitate urban employment and public realm improvements, Uptown is experiencing new job growth, new housing, and is animated like never before. As a result of conversations with the city and the BIA's Economic Development Committee members, this past year the BIA hosted a poll, which I think many of you participated in, for stakeholders asking what they thought needed to be added to Uptown to improve the vibrancy of the city core. Of the responses, retail was mentioned most. Top retail suggestions were related to affordable clothing for all ages and sexes, home decor and kitchenware, and a one-stop shop and a variety store. Top comments focused on ensuring Uptown had inclusive and diverse businesses that reflected the whole community, the need for a flagship retailer, affordable shopping and food options, and more independently owned shops. Over the last few years, Uptown has experienced significant changes to its streetscape. As you all know, new benches, segregated bike lanes, wider sidewalks to facilitate patios and pedestrians, bike racks, planters, trees, and tree grates, waste receptacles, decorative lighting add to Uptown's unique vibrancy and encourage a more active lifestyle. When we look at public transportation, this past June we were all pleased to have the LRT begin running, kicked off with 11 days of free rides and a celebratory event hosted in both downtown and Uptown. In mid-October of 2019, the region of Waterloo released a report about the first 3 months of ridership where boardings were up significantly from last year and far exceeded expectations. So next steps, as I mentioned, this report is a work in progress. We found working on it very incredible and really interesting and thought-provoking, and we thought that you should have access to this information too to better understand how Uptown is evolving and changing, and it would be just a shame to leave it sitting on a shelf collecting dust. So from a BIA standpoint, we're looking to use information from this research to create strategies around attracting and retaining retailers, and I believe the city is looking at the same thing for office space. We'll work together to identify potential new businesses for Uptown, reaching out to them and providing marketing packages and information. And we're also going to look at updating this report periodically to help keep everybody informed about Uptown. And we also have housed it on our website as well if people want to have a look-see there too. So with that, I'll open it up to questions, and I have the team here to help. Ryan was very instrumental, as I mentioned, in pulling together a lot of this data, and Justin, and so I thank them, and Jamie with the consumer spending.
Certainly looks great with the new Uptown branding there and the PowerPoint as well. And big shout out certainly to Ryan for the collectors of all things data and all things photographable. But there's some of his photographs in there. Councillor Bonagor.
Through you, Mayor Jaworski. So Tracy, thank you for coming and leading us through that. I was hoping you can explain to us who exactly is the audience for this document.
Yeah, I think it definitely, like when we were first starting out, we were talking about building out a retail strategy, and so it was kind of focused very much on that, but it's now morphed into a larger group of people. I think potentially there's information in here. I think Justin's going to add something too around office space and that kind of thing. So I think we can grab information from this for lots of different people, whether it is that we're marketing and advertising Uptown to bring in new businesses or retailers, or for general public, for you folks, definitely for our board at the BIA. Yeah, it's kind of morphed into a much bigger group than originally what we had anticipated.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Bonagor, the last part was really what I was going to touch on from the economic development perspective. We look at this as an attraction tool, one of the tools that we have in our toolbox to provide people with information about what's happening. So if a company is looking at making an investment, and that's really what it is in the Uptown, bringing their business here, this is one thing that we can demonstrate and give them some confidence that this is a very good place to invest.
So when we're looking at some of the information in there, so the spending potential, just want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly, that essentially accounts for the number of people moving in. not necessarily that we're expecting a whole lot of high income earners to be uptown. It's just this number of people are coming in and their daily requirements would lead to this amount of spending.
Spending in Uptown, yes, I believe that is, yeah, Jamie, do you want to?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. That's absolutely correct. It's the population growth itself is the primary driver of the numbers. So it's not really reflective of the anticipated income levels of new residents. It's reflective of what existing residents are, and it's almost as simple as number of new residents times expenditures, and that's where we get to the quantifying it.
That helps a lot. There are times where people see the Uptown as moving beyond attainable. So it's good to understand that that's not what the report is saying. It's just saying with these new people coming in, this is the landscape as it will shift. And one thing it may not be relevant in a report like this, but one thing that seemed to be missing to me was just a note about social supports or social cohesion in the core. So it's not just business separate from residents, it's residents as part of a community here. Is that something that would even come under something like this, or is that sort of additional to city purposes?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were looking at this report largely for what it was, which was trying to focus on kind of the investment side of things. So I know that is a lens we are trying to work into a lot of the things that we're doing these days. This particular project was really, I think, kind of focused on the sort of the business side of things, the attraction side of things. So we kind of put everything through that lens and kind of assess whether it makes sense or doesn't, and so. The choice was to kind of present it as is, but in future reports as we go forward, because I think Tracy is committed to jointly with us to continue to update this as we go forward, that we could kind of put it through that lens again as we go forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, thank you very much for that report. And I think Uptown has never looked so good. How about that? I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our third delegate for today is on Adventure for Change Activities Update, and we have Heather Powers and Dr. Jeff Nelson.
Awesome, thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for having us here today. As we were introduced, my name is Heather Powers. I am the Community Engagement Coordinator at Adventure for Change, and I have with me today Jeff Nelson, Emeritus Professor of Psychology at Laurier and one of our Better Beginnings researcher. While we will be the ones up here speaking, we also have a number of our wonderful community members who came with us today to show their support and their value of the programming that is happening in their community. So many of these moms have kids involved in our programs, are involved themselves, and many of them actually volunteer for what we do as well. A couple teenagers, and I think there's a little future Better Beginnings child running around here somewhere. So thank you so much for having all of us. Many of you know Jeremy Horn, the founder and executive director of Adventure for Change, although he would probably push off that title. He sends his regrets this afternoon. Unfortunately, Jeremy is currently out of the country dealing with a family health emergency, but he wanted to send his most sincere gratitude to many of you who have gotten involved with us, who have come out to see the hub, and who have supported our work. So thank you so much from him for having us here today. In the spring of this year, Adventure for Change hosted our first ever public fundraising event. In the promotions of that event leading up to it, someone commented that we are Waterloo's best kept secret. Well, we don't want to be a secret anymore. We think that the work that's happening in the Lakeshore South community is crucial to the vitality of our community and the well-being of our citizens and of our communities. And we are pleased to have the opportunity today to share a bit of this work with you and some new research that has just come out. So we're very excited to share that. The work that has been done in North Waterloo, specifically in the neighborhoods of Albert Street, where there's a regional housing complex, and Sunnydale as a community, is the direct result and the passionate work of many individuals. So we especially wanted to thank the contributions made by the House of Friendship, the Waterloo Public School Board, WCI as the high school, and specifically the principals at Winston Churchill and Cedarbrae, who have all worked very, very hard to make this happen, along with the Lakeshore South Community Association. Today we're here to tell you about a particularly impactful program that is run by Adventure for Change. It's called Better Beginnings. Before we get into too many details, I wanted to just give you a very short history of Better Beginnings here in our community. It has existed in Ontario for over 20 years, but about 6 years ago, the action began here for us. So can I? Look at that. Okay. Figuring it out as I go along here. Thank you for your patience. In 2012, a group of community members, much like the lovely people sitting behind me here, in the Sunnydale area of North Waterloo, came together with a desire to do more for their children. They wanted to give their kids the best start possible and to support newcomer families as they navigated the entrance into our education system. That group of residents, along with the principal of our local elementary school, which at that time was Cedarbrae and Winston, and together with the House of Friendship, came together as a group and were introduced to the Better Beginnings model. In 2014, that group applied for a grant through the Lyle S. Hallman Foundation and were successful. In 2015, the House of Friendship, along with the steering committee of our community members, launched the Better Beginnings Waterloo program, and it's been operating in our community proudly ever since. Now, Better Beginnings is making a consistent impact through our programs in 3 elementary schools. In 2018, the program shifted from the leadership of the House of Friendship to our local community-rooted Adventure for Change. In 2018, Adventure for Change, sorry, you know what, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me pass it on before I get too into this to Jeff Nelson.
So program Better Beginnings, Better Futures is what Waterloo was modeled after. That continues to this day. It started in the 90s and it has 3 goals. The same goals that Waterloo Better Beginnings has adopted. Number 1 is the prevention of problems for children. The second is the promotion of parent and family well-being. And the third is community development and improvement. The arrow. There are 4 key qualities of all Better Beginnings programs. They're universal. That means they're accessible to everyone in the community. Specifically in our program, it's for 4 to 8-year-olds. But it extends beyond that. It's multi-year, it's high quality, and it's what we call ecological or comprehensive. So it's not just the child, it's not just a program for kids, it's not just a program for parents, it's just not a community development project. It's all of those things designed to promote child and family well-being. It's also integrated. You heard Heather talk about all the partners who are involved in this project. Through the schools and the House of Friendship, this project couldn't be done without them. And finally, there's a strong component on resident participation and community involvement. We couldn't operate these programs or the activities in that community without people like the residents who are sitting behind us today, and many, many more.
All right, the picture up in front of us is of the neighborhood hub. In 2018, Adventure for Change secured this location, and it was actually dubbed the neighborhood hub by community residents. The hub is a space where programs happen, where meetings are held, where community members come to grieve losses and to host birthday parties, and to meet to plan community activities. It is a place where teenagers drop in, where children are tutored after school, and where parents come to find resources. The hub is located within walking distance of all the neighborhoods that we serve, as well as the schools and the universities, and the Tim Hortons, which many of our community members frequent. We love it when they walk to Tim Hortons and stop in, with or without a coffee for us. The hub is located, it is a space that is safe, consistent, and welcoming, and is a place where many of our community members have come to see their own. Okay. I could rattle off for you a long list of all of the many programs that we run, about 42 in total throughout the course of the year, but instead I would like to share a story with you. Up on the screen is Mawata. Mawata is a resident in our neighborhood. She came to Canada from Liberia and has 8 children. Moata's family is involved in almost every aspect of what we do in the community. She has a son in grade 11, Musa. Musa has been involved in our teenage program that meets weekly on Thursday nights for a number of years. This program started with 3 teenage boys in the community and has since grown to over 100 teenagers that revolve around us in a number of ways. Through that program, Musa found our youth employment program, which helped him find full-time employment for the whole summer last year and has continued on into his high school co-op this year. Moata's next 2 boys are in middle school and early high school, and they attend our program as well, but also spend many hours volunteering at our many after-school program. These teens, along with many others, give back to their community by helping to facilitate games, activities, tutoring programs, reading challenges, and many other things for their siblings and the younger community members. They also spend their whole summers helping us to facilitate 5 summer camps for their siblings and friends. Moata has 3 children in elementary school who participate in those after-school programs where they learn about physical activity, healthy lifestyle, and get extra help with literacy and other academic support. Moata herself joins us at many points throughout the week. She has attended our 3 weekly parent groups for a number of years and has become a volunteer herself, giving many of her hours throughout the summer to run after little kids at camp, help in the kitchen, and do other tasks that we need. She uses her skills to give back to her community. 2 years ago, through our partnership with Cedarbrae Public School, teachers asked if we could find some way to help some families with parents who have little or no literacy skills. Through that request, we developed a women's English class. We started with a family literacy program that went so well that our women stayed on to learn more English as their kids went back to school. That program is run by a couple of retired teachers from the WRDSB. Through that program, Moata began to learn how to read. And this picture up on the screen, one of my favorites, is the first time that Moata read a storybook to her youngest kid. We're very excited to see how her younger 2 children go into school with far more school readiness with a mom who has literacy skills. She's not with us today because she has transitioned into a school English program, so she's in school every day. This is the beauty of the work that we do. It's holistic, as Jeff mentioned. It's not one kid in a vacuum in an after-school program. It's teachers, siblings, parents, community members all working together for better futures for their kids. The one aspect that makes Adventure for Change and Better Beginnings unique is our incredibly high community engagement, as you see with all of our lovely people who have come out to join us today. The stats on the screen paint a great picture, but I'd like to draw your attention to the 2 last numbers on the screen there. These numbers represent not a staff of professionals dictating the needs of a community and serving up a charitable solution. Instead, these numbers represent the vast number of community members who have become involved with this project. While our staff is small, 2 full-time, 3 part-time, and an intern, and some high school co-op students, we instead provide a community member-driven project. We have a staff that ensures that our programs are safe and that our activities align with our research and that all of our work continues, but it really is all of these community members that make this thing happen. Every program we run, from our We Wellness, which starts in JK, to our youth and our parents programs, all emphasize contribution and teach and encourage the skills of giving back and serving one's own community. Our programs are largely staffed by the youth and older siblings of participants and university students who have outgrown our programming but come back to invest in the program that shaped their childhood, and parents who see their children benefiting. We facilitate, as I said, 5 weeks of summer camp for our community, and with the exception of a few staff members, those camps, as well as many of our other programs, are largely planned, run, and facilitated by volunteers. The community gets it, and they've shown us that they get it by giving their time and their energy.
Just to give you a fair warning, you're running up against your 10 minutes, so
we are.
Yeah, okay.
Will you give me another couple of minutes? Sure, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, so the research. I'm just going to tell you about the research on the Better Beginnings Waterloo. There's extensive research on The larger Better Beginnings project that was started in the 90s, where kids were followed up from age 4 to 19 that I can tell you about if you have questions. We have, in 2015, we gathered data on the kids and their parents through teacher reports, parent interviews. That was before Better Beginnings started. We call that our baseline comparison group. And then in 2018 and 2019, we collected the same data on another sample, people who'd been participating in Better Beginnings. In addition to standardized outcome measures, we also did open-ended qualitative parent interviews and focus groups. And this is what the research shows. So go back to the 3 goals. The first is about preventing children's emotional and behavioral problems. You can see from this figure here, the baseline group has a higher level of behavioral and emotional problems than the Better Beginnings, what it's called the focal cohort, that group that participated in Better Beginnings. All the findings I'll report to are statistically significant. So the project reaches its first goal. I'll just read you one quote here from a parent that tells the same story. My child suffers from anxiety. Participating with Better Beginnings helped her a lot emotionally. I can see a big difference. Parents also experience enhanced social support. This is the baseline group. This is the focal cohort. Parents talk a lot about social support. And they say things like, for me, I learned from the program. Instead of sitting in the house and being depressed all the time, I leave the house. I make friends. I meet people. I laugh with them. I talk with them. They give me advice. I give them advice. When we sit at home, we have no one to talk to. We don't have family there. And last is the level of dissatisfaction with the Cedarbrae community is lower for the Better Beginnings families. With all of this activity that happened, there's a significant improvement in community satisfaction. One person says it brought people together. The hub is not just a place to hang out, it's a place where people from different cultures and backgrounds can connect, forming a community. So, to summarize, the 3 goals of prevention, promotion of children or parent and family well-being, and community development, there's evidence for all of those goals being realized in a short period of time.
Yeah, so evidence proven, community driven. It's a great thing that's happening, and we're happy to tell you this story today, but telling you this story is not the end of what we have. We would like you to join us as individuals and as a council to partner. We encourage each of you to come visit us at the hub, as some of you already have. Perhaps we could arrange for a counselor's day. Come out, come see what's going on. We need to ensure that this work continues into the future. So let's find a way to work together as citizens and as our city's leadership to make sure that our communities have the resources they need to continue to be vibrant, contributing, and healthy communities. We did leave, there's a little pamphlet with our contact information and just some of those stats on the research in case you're interested in looking a little bit more, just on the table with the agendas over there. So if you're more interested in research, please feel free to take one on your way out and contact us. We'd love to hear more from you out in our space. Can I leave questions?
Awesome. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Dr. Nelson. I think it's unfortunate Jeremy's away today, and unfortunate Councillor Veith's away today, because I've known, for more than half a decade, so I know she's known Jeremy for probably a couple decades and all his work that he's done in there through all the car washes and all the other visits, and she's very, very in tune with the Sunnydale neighborhood and the needs and the opportunities there. Mm-hmm. I really want to know, what is the best pet? When you see Mwata, you have to ask her. The book that she's reading was called The Best Pet. Now I want to know, what's the best pet?
The best? Great question. I'll get back to you on that one.
I'll have to drop by, find the book, and fill council in on that. Any questions for the delegates? Seeing none, thank you very much. I know it's been a lot of great work that Jeremy's been doing there in the Adventure for Change group, and obviously the hundreds of volunteers literally that have made things happen there. So thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you so much for your time.
And thank you to the moms, parents, students who came out today. Next up, we move into staff reports, and the first up is the Drinking Water Quality Management System Update Management Review and Operational Plan, a report prepared for you for information. Anybody have any questions on this information or want to move it, perhaps? Go ahead, Councillor Vasic.
Through you, Mayor Jaworski. There's just the point under the highlights here where it says the MECP was made aware of an adverse water quality reporting incident in September 2018, and it was going to be reviewed in greater detail during 2019 inspection. So I was wondering if it's been reviewed and what were the results? Yeah.
Sorry, pardon me, through you, Mayor Jaworski, yes, it has been reviewed, and they were satisfied with all of the corrective actions that we had already taken upon discovery, and there were no further actions required.
Being satisfied with that answer, you're probably going to want to move it. Moved by Councillor Vasic, seconded by Councillor Hanmer. All those in favor? That's all of us. Thank you. Next up, item B, traffic and parking bylaw amendments. Pastern Trail report prepared by Helga Bauman, and we have Chris here. Any questions for Chris? Yes, please. Go ahead.
Thanks. Through you, Mayor Jaworski. This is in my ward, so I have a few questions. Also, maybe possibly to help with the rest of council's decisions. So first, I have three questions, maybe one follow-up. So first is around the 8 to 9, and then again the 3 to 4. Residents were hoping for an 8 to 4 because there's people coming in and out during the day as well, sometimes volunteers from the school. So just curious the reasons why it's just for the 8 to 9 and 3 to 4.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Vasic. We're trying to be consistent with other schools when we're doing this type of change to on-street parking. We try and keep it within the hours of dismissal and arrival times in order to ensure that the rest of the residents who live on the street also have the opportunity to use those spaces during the daytime hours.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right. I didn't turn it off. Okay, thank you. Is it something that we could have a further conversation about, or more ongoing conversation as we're thinking about parking in school zones? I know that can be challenging throughout the community. So if we were to have a more ongoing conversation about no stopping and no parking in school zones more broadly, what's the best forum to do that?
Through you, Mayor, to the councillor. We've tried to be consistent at all of our school areas and provide the same amount of no parking, no stopping regulations so that no matter what school you're at, you kind of are already educated on where you can park and where you can't park. So we can go back and look at all of our school zone areas, but I think we'll find that we've been pretty consistent with them so that the residents know what they have to do or not do.
Yeah, I think that's important, that consistency piece. I guess I was curious, just because Chris is here too and we're doing the transportation master plan update. I was also wondering if looking into school zones and best practices in school zones is something that can happen or is happening through the transportation master plan.
It's not specifically happening through the transportation master plan because that was not one of the asks for the consultant to look at. But as I said, we can go back and look at our school zones and see what we have provided for all of them.
Thanks. I have a question which is probably for Shane. Oh, he's not here. It was a plan for enforcement. So what is the plan? Do you know, as you've been working on this? No. Okay, so we'll follow up with Shane. Yeah, okay, thank you. And then the other thing I was thinking, are there any best practices or strategies for, in advance of these signs going in, is there anything that the school and the neighborhood can do to educate people who are coming to park there during pickup and drop-off times? And I know that the school is doing a pamphlet, and I know that the signs will be there, so those are the clear indication. But just curious in advance of that, if there's anything that can happen to give people lots of warning and kind of garner that buy-in.
Through you, Mayor Jaworski, to Councillor Vasic. The school and the city have always worked together to make sure that we're giving the same message to the residents. So I think, again, in this case, the school will send out the pamphlet with the information, what a no stopping sign means, what a no parking sign means, and we will work with the school to make sure that that information does get out to the residents.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Vasek, seconded by Councillor Bonagor. All those in favor? Thank you. And I think it is a real challenge. I think we need more, no driving to school signs. Maybe that's what we need. Item C, Ontario Regulation 128129, Overall Responsibility Operator and Operator in Charge Designation. I can't imagine questions on it. Councillor Bodley, want to move it? Councillor Hanmer likes it too. All those in favor? Okay, excellent. Thank you, and thanks to the staff who are the operators in charge. Item D, Mary Allen Park, Public Board, prepared by Sonia. Welcome, Sonia.
Hi. Thank you for having me here today. Arts Advisory Committee, which is a committee approved and appointed by council. So this has been a long process since the beginning of Mary Allen Park journey. As part of public art policy, it actually, which was also topped up by parks with some additional funds to support the addition of public art in the park. It's part of an ongoing process that we're doing to make community centers out of our park. So this is the second project in our Harvest Table program. The first one is found in Waterloo Park, which is called Nuts, you might remember as the Ted Fullerton piece. And so this went through a public call. We had a number of applications. It was a planned project, and we had always to affix a piece of table. We knew that this was a small budget, so we had put that out there, and the plan was to put it on the table after the park was finished. This is the park as it is in the design, which also came out very close to how it is today. So we put the public call out, we juried it. There was a member of the neighborhood association on the jury, as well as a professional artist who was able to recommend the art that was selected. The piece that was selected was by artist Nicholas Reese. A nice tie-in is he is not only a community member, but he's a former resident of the neighborhood. So his personal experience of the neighborhood really figured largely into this. The idea of Cats R Us is that there's this neighborhood cat that belongs to nobody but comes to all the houses. I've since found out from a resident of the neighborhood that there is a neighborhood cat like this. Nicholas no longer lives in the neighborhood, but feels a really strong connection to this story and to this neighborhood. So he said it could have easily been any animal, but he selected cats for this, for the reason that it fits nicely on the table. So he has suggested 3 sculptures which will be fixed to the table. You can see where he's suggesting. The jury was very strong in the recommendation that the cats have to have some kind of interaction with the people as they sit on the table. So Nicholas has done some drawings that weren't actually in his original application, but actually reflect more what he plans to do. The pieces will be made from cast cement, and they will also have a cement fondue put on the top surface of it, which will create a bronze-like surface. It won't be bronze, it'll be the Portland cement. What's interesting about this medium means that he can actually do any repairs in situ, so in the place if the ears have been knocked off. He's thought very carefully, we're thinking that the ears are going to be the thing that gets damaged if anything does. He's also thought very carefully about how they will be fixed to the tables and how they will be transported there and how the neighborhood will use the tables with the cats in place. Again, he's thought so carefully that he's even measured tablecloths to be able to fit between the cats. I understand from neighborhood residents that this table is very actively used, not just for community programs, but for neighborhood meetings, for community picnics, and for a number of things throughout the year. So some additional photos that he's done. And I have nothing further but to add to this, but I did want to come and present to you to give you the story behind the piece, the neighborhood connection, and the idea, because I think that the story really contributes to this project, the idea that it belongs to everybody and creates a specific identity for the neighborhood, not just in the park, but in the community in general.
Cats in the neighborhood are going to get mistaken impression it's okay to sit on the kitchen table from this thing. Questions from council. Councillor Bonagor.
Through you, Mayor Jaworski, thank you for bringing this update. I'm sure the residents in Mary Allen neighbourhood will be very glad to see it. My main question is, do we get to name them? Or will that be, like, I can imagine the neighbourhood might be interested in naming the cats.
Through you, Mayor Jaworski. Nicholas Reese is very lovely, and he would very much love to hear that the cats have become part of the neighborhood identity. He's named the piece Cats R Us, but I think he would love to come to community picnics. He really misses being part of this community, and I think he would it would be a point of personal pride if they were named by the community.
I think the cat on the Ion artwork down at Central or somewhere down there is going to be getting its name soon too through the Regional Public Art Advisory Committee. So stay tuned on the name of that cat. Further questions? Are these, so you said what did you say is on them?
It's a topical treatment that creates like a shiny surface to them. It'll look like bronze, but it won't actually be bronze. Yeah,
it will look bronze. And the color of the table then is it like the one that's in Waterloo Park?
No, it's currently a wood structure table with slatted wood.
It's already in place. Ah, okay, good. Moved by Councillor Bonagor, seconded by Councillor Vasic. All those in favor? Thank you. Welcome to our new art. Item E is delayed for, well, we'll see till it's delayed, but it's not coming up today. Item F, City of Waterloo Transportation Master Plan Update, feedback from Council Workshop, and this is a report prepared by Chris, and is there any feedback on our feedback? Go, there we go. We got one. One taker.
Through you, Mayor Jaworski, we can't have you coming here for nothing, Chris. So when I was reading through the overview... I
think he was hoping we would.
I know. And this may just be me missing something in the report here, but I didn't see mention of our discussion about levels of service and the need to provide like broader parameters for warranted action. The note that I saw was to update set targets, KPIs and other goals to help councillors better understand the effectiveness. But what I understood from our conversation was we actually wanted more tools at the city's disposal. We wanted some additional targets or different targets that allow for human experience, not just vehicular data. So is that somewhere else that's deeper in the report and it just didn't bubble up to this overview? Or is that something that maybe got lost in translation?
Through you, Mayor Jaworski. Yeah, I've had a couple of comments back through this report. Just recalling it was a 2-hour session. We had a member of the project team and consultant taking notes at the back, and there was a lot of information that's been consolidated down into this report. So between us, we thought we covered most of the subject areas and the themes and the key areas that council laid out for us. But if we've missed a few or misinterpreted, we'll certainly be happy to take that away, make sure that we either reword it or enhance on that to make sure we're meeting council satisfaction.
I would appreciate that because I know that myself, Councillor Henry and other people were talking specifically about levels of service, and I know that NACDO has a number of resources that have kind of metrics that aim for safety and inclusion and metrics for pedestrian spaces, things like that. So I would be looking for that in the draft that comes forward. That kind of thing.
Okay. Maybe a question back to Councillor if we've misinterpreted any specific. I've got one from Councillor Vasich, and we'll take this one away as well. But as I say, we'll certainly be happy to reword anything that you feel was not correctly interpreted. Regarding levels of service, we have made sure that the consultant is working. When we talk about levels of service, it's typically at an intersection. It's usually about the traffic movements, but we have they are working on an all-user mechanism for kind of assessing levels of service at intersections now, not just vehicular traffic. So that's certainly one component we are checking that box on.
And for clarification, were you talking about metrics in general or particular about intersections? I'm just trying to catch up on the conversation here.
Metrics in general.
Okay, that's
intersections is part of that.
Okay.
Yes. And a question for clerks, was that session recorded as well? Okay, so that would be available should they need to go back in. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bodley.
Through you, Mayor Jaworski. I just had a couple of questions. Just under the Vision Zero piece, there's, and this is maybe piggybacking on some of Councillor Brasick's comments with respect to signage earlier. There is a fair bit of conversation in there around safety within school zones and discussion around safe speeds in school zones. But I want to, I guess, from my perspective, not just school zones. There are neighborhood streets that wouldn't be within the typical definition of a school zone that are still sort of walking routes for children on their way to school. So I want to make sure that when we're talking about safe speeds and we end up getting to a conversation about whether neighborhood speeds should be 40 or 30 or when we get into that conversation, that we're not just talking about the, a couple hundred meters in front of the school, that we're talking about the broader neighborhood in general. And so when I read the Vision Zero piece, I read it as being really directed towards school zones, and I want to be clear, at least from my perspective, that I think it should be broader. I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Through you, Mayor Jaworski. No, again, we're trying to summarise things in a meaningful way, but we'll certainly take that on board and when we next discuss with the consultant.
Thank you. And then just to follow up through your Mayor Jaworski, or not a follow up, a new one. There was also some conversation around, and I know this is really something that the Sustainability Advisory Committee takes to heart around how the Transportation Master Plan impacts greenhouse gas emissions. I know we talked about that very briefly at the council workshop on this, and I didn't really see it. It doesn't really fall neatly into one of the topics of conversation, so I can appreciate that, but I want to make sure that when we're talking about the metrics that Councillor Bonagor is talking about, that we are additionally looking at what this transportation master plan is going to have from a community scope impact to our greenhouse gas emissions.
Through you, Mayor Jaworski. It's certainly something we're discussing at the project team level.
Good, thank you. It's and you're more thinking about getting people out of their cars as opposed to driving their cars faster and using less gas that way, right? I guess it depends how fast. Anyway, okay. I'm good. And we are all good. Okay? Questioners want to move it? Moved by Councillor Bodley, second by Councillor Bonagor. All those in favor? Thank you, and thank you for the great work on the Transportation Master Plan as it continues on over the next number of years. With that, we get to the end, and we can skip forward to the Waterloo Public Library e-content campaign. And I think Councillor Bonagor, were you going to talk about this or move it, or?
Yes, just briefly, through you, Mayor Jaworski. I mean, the issue of e-books is a considerable one for municipalities. Everywhere we're being charged more for books, and they have a short lifespan. So I would like to suggest we support the library in its advocacy.
Right, seconded by Councillor Vassic. Yeah. You know, what's really disappointing is that I think it was about 3 years ago where we did the exact same thing, and they made it worse. Made the books less affordable, less accessible. It's unbelievable, really. So it's something that we need to do again. Any questions on that? All those in favor? Thank you for doing that unanimously. We'll get the word out. Councillor Vassic?
Just effect, and I saw that MP
This morning, I was lucky enough to go
All those in favor? We are adjourned.